Before there was mercy, there was law, and before there was law, there was consequence. In the oldest texts of the Hindu tradition, the Vedas, the Puranas, the vast and labyrinthine Mahabharata, the architects of the cosmos did not shy from a single terrible truth, that every action leaves a mark upon the universe, and that mark must eventually be answered. Beneath the mortal world, beneath the oceans and the roots of sacred mountains, there exists a place where that answering is absolute. The Hindus called it Naraka, not one hell, but many. Not a prison, but a mirror, reflecting back with perfect and pitiless accuracy every deed a soul has ever committed. Every kingdom requires a sovereign, and Naraka found its ruler in Yama, the first mortal to ever die, and by that singular distinction made divine. In the Rig Veda, Yama is described not as a monster, but as a pathfinder, the one who blazed the trail all souls must follow. He dwells in his palace of Yamaloka, seated upon a throne of judgment, his skin the deep green of storms before they break, his eyes carrying the weight of every life ever extinguished. In one hand, he holds a danda, a staff of punishment. In the other, a noose called the pasha, with which his servants drag the unwilling dead before him. He does not rage, he does not gloat. He simply sees, completely and without error. No king rules alone, and Yama's court contains perhaps the most remarkable figure in all of Hindu eschatology, Chitragupta, the scribe of souls. Born from Brahma himself, who sat in meditation for 11,000 years before Chitragupta emerged fully formed from his body, this god was created for one singular and unrelenting purpose, to record every thought, word, and deed of every human being who has ever lived. His book, the Agrasandani, misses nothing. No act of cruelty hidden behind a charitable smile. No whispered betrayal. No secret kindness performed in darkness. When a soul arrives before Yama's throne, Chitragupta reads the account aloud. Every moment, every choice. And Yama listens and judges, and there is no appeal. Death in Hindu tradition is not an ending, but a transit, and the road between the mortal world and Yama's court is long, strange, and deeply treacherous. According to the Garuda Purana, the soul spends 12 days in a disoriented state, the ghost of itself, wandering close to the body before it is finally summoned. Then begins the journey across Vaitarni, a terrible river of blood and filth, dark and boiling, filled with sharp bones. The righteous cross on the backs of cows given as gifts during their lifetimes. The wicked wade or drown or are pulled under. The path continues for hundreds of miles through burning sands, dense forests, and terrain that mirrors the soul's own moral landscape, because in Naraka, the outer world always reflects the inner one. Yama does not collect souls himself. For this work, he commands the Yamadutas, his divine messengers, feared across all of Hindu cosmology. They are described in the Puranas as dark-complexioned, with red eyes, carrying ropes and nooses, arriving at the moment of death whether the dying are ready or not. They are not evil. They are functionaries of cosmic order, as necessary as the breath they come to claim. Yet there exist, in these same texts, accounts of a competing force, the Vishnudutas, messengers of Vishnu, who arrive to escort the truly righteous. When both sets of messengers appear at a deathbed, there is negotiation, even argument. The Bhagavata Purana preserves one such debate, a contest of theology conducted over a dying man's body, each side citing scripture. What awaits the condemned is not a single chamber of suffering, but a vast and intricately organized cosmological structure. Different Puranas offer different counts. The Vishnu Purana names 28 distinct hells, each calibrated to specific categories of sin. The Devi Bhagavata Purana goes further, describing the hells in such precise geographic and architectural detail that one almost imagines a divine surveyor walked its boundaries. Naraka descends in tiers, each darker and more intense than the last. Some are forests of razor-edged leaves. Some are vast pits of molten metal. Some are frozen wastelands, and crucially, and this separates Naraka fundamentally from its Abrahamic cousins, none are permanent. Even the deepest hell is a purification, not an eternity. The soul will eventually emerge, cleansed of its debts. Among the uppermost, and therefore least severe of Naraka's chambers, lies Tamisra, a name that translates simply as darkness. But this darkness is not mere absence of light. It is a living, pressing thing, described in the Vishnu Purana as a blackness so absolute that souls cannot perceive even themselves, stripped of all identity, all memory of who they were, left with nothing but the awareness of having done wrong. Those sentenced here committed theft, not the theft of poverty or desperation, but the cold calculation of taking what belonged to others: wealth, wives, children. In Tamisra, the Yamadutas bind them, torture them with weapons and hunger and thirst, until the full weight of every stolen moment collapses inward. The darkness is not punishment. The darkness is reflection. Descending deeper, the nature of punishment grows more visceral. Raurava, from the Sanskrit word ruru, a demonic beast described as a terrible hybrid creature, is reserved for those who in life caused suffering to other living beings out of pure selfishness. Those who sacrificed animals without devotion, those who inflicted needless pain, those who treated the living world as merely a resource to be consumed. Here, the creatures they harmed are reborn in transformed, monstrous form. The Ruru beasts pursue, tear, and torment the condemned without ceasing. It is a principle that resonates across Hindu moral philosophy. What you enact upon the world enacts upon you. The punishment is not designed by cruelty. It is designed by symmetry, by a universe that insists on returning everything to its source. For those who cooked living creatures in their arrogance, who took life without gratitude, without ceremony, without acknowledgement of the sacred compact between hunter and hunted, Naraka prepared Kumbhipaka, the hell of the boiling pot. Enormous iron vessels filled with oil, heated from below by fires that never diminish, that never cool. The condemned are lowered into them and boiled, and when they are reduced, they are made whole again and boiled once more. The Puranas specify the duration with characteristic precision, as many years as there are hairs upon the animal's body. The symmetry is again absolute. Each life taken carelessly becomes a unit of suffering precisely measured. The oil does not care about intention. The fire does not negotiate. In Kumbhipaka, arithmetic is everything. Some hells in the Hindu tradition are not chambers or pits at all, but landscapes, terrible parodies of the natural world. Asipatravana is a forest. Its trees rise to considerable height, their trunks ancient and gnarled, their canopy wide. But every leaf on every branch has been replaced by a blade. Thin, perfect, surgical edges catching the dim light of Naraka like thousands of small mirrors. Those condemned to this forest are those who in life abused their power. Kings who taxed their people into starvation, officials who perverted justice, teachers who corrupted the innocent under their care. They are driven through the forest by hounds and Yamadutas, and every branch they brush, every leaf that touches them, cuts. The forest is enormous. The condemned run until they cannot run, and then they are healed, and they run again. The Shalmali tree is real. It grows across the Indian subcontinent, tall, broad, its bark studded with thick, sharp thorns. In the natural world, it is merely formidable. In Naraka's reimagining, the Shalmali hell consists of a single, impossibly vast specimen of this tree, magnified to cosmic scale. Its thorns the length of spears, its bark an iron-hard wall of spikes. This hell awaits those who committed adultery, those who violated the sacred bonds of trust that hold families and communities together. The condemned are forced to embrace the tree, pressed into its thorns, held there. The Puranas are characteristically explicit about the mechanics. The punishment speaks to the Hindu reverence for dharma, sacred duty, and the belief that the social fabric is itself divine, that to tear it is a cosmological offense deserving cosmological correction. Among the most severe punishments in Naraka's taxonomy are those reserved not for common criminals but for the educated and the spiritual, those who possessed knowledge and chose to misuse it. A Brahmin who accepted gifts and gave nothing back, a teacher who sold sacred wisdom for personal gain, a healer who withheld medicine for profit. These souls descend to hells of particular intensity. The Puranas are explicit. With knowledge comes magnified responsibility. The ordinary person who sins does so in relative ignorance. The scholar, the priest, the one who has studied the nature of dharma and still chosen otherwise, their transgression is of a different order entirely. Several hells are described as places of cold rather than heat, because cold in Hindu cosmology represents the death of light, the extinguishing of the sacred flame that wisdom was meant to keep alive. At the very base of Naraka's descending hierarchy sits Avicii, whose name means, with devastating simplicity, without waves. It is the hell of absolute stillness, of the complete absence of movement or change. Here come those whose sins were so comprehensive, so sustained, so deliberately repeated across an entire lifetime, and sometimes across multiple lifetimes, that ordinary Naraka cannot contain what they have earned. In Avicii, even the fires do not flicker. The air does not move. Time within Avicii does not progress in any perceivable way. The Puranas describe souls here as experiencing duration without markers, suffering without rhythm, isolation without the mercy of unconsciousness. It is the closest Hindu cosmology comes to a permanent condition, though even here, the ancient texts insist, even here, an end is eventually reached. The universe, in the Hindu view, does not create permanent waste. Hindu funerary tradition recognizes something remarkable. The living can influence the experience of the dead. The Garuda Purana, which is traditionally recited in Hindu homes during the mourning period following a death, provides detailed instructions for rites that ease a soul's journey. The Shraddha ceremony, performed by sons and male relatives at prescribed intervals, offers food, water, and prayer that genuinely reach the deceased in their transit. The Pitru, or ancestral spirits, depend upon these offerings. Neglect them, and the ancestors suffer. Honor them, and even a soul already suffering in Naraka may find its burden briefly lightened. This creates a sacred reciprocity across the boundary of death, the living and the dead bound together in ongoing obligation. The family as a unit that does not end at the grave but continues into the cosmological. To understand Naraka is to understand karma, not in its diluted modern form, but in its original, rigorous cosmological meaning. Karma is not a vague cosmic force that punishes rudeness or rewards good moods. It is an exact accounting system embedded in the fabric of reality itself. Every intentional action, physical, verbal, mental, produces a karmic residue, either positive or negative, that adheres to the soul and must be discharged through equivalent experience. Good karma accumulates toward heavenly rebirth. Bad karma drives the soul downward into Naraka. The specific hell, its duration, the precise nature of its suffering. All of this emerges directly from the arithmetic of what was done. Chitragupta's book is not a moral judgment. It is a physics equation. And the universe, the Hindu sages insisted, balances its equations without exception, without mercy, and without error. Yet, Naraka is not the only possible destination. Hindu theology holds open a parallel and radically different possibility, one that does not depend on the arithmetic of karma alone. The Bhagavata Purana insists that sincere devotion to Vishnu, the preserver, can dissolve karmic debt in ways that Chitragupta's ledger cannot anticipate. When the Vishnu Dutas arrive at a deathbed, they present a different account, one written not in deeds, but in devotion, not in actions, but in the orientation of the heart. The story of Ajamila illustrates this precisely. A man whose life was one long catalogue of sin, who at the moment of death called out the name of his son, Narayana, which is also a name of Vishnu, and found the Vishnu Dutas at his bedside, waving away the Yama Dutas, bearing him not to Naraka, but to Vaikunta, Vishnu's paradise. What makes Naraka philosophically distinct from the hells of many other traditions is its position within a larger cosmological cycle. In Hindu thought, Naraka is not an endpoint. It is a way station in the perpetual turning of samsara, the wheel of death and rebirth. A soul that has served its time in hell emerges, its negative karma discharged, and returns to the cycle of reincarnation. It may be reborn as an insect, an animal, a human, or a divine being, all depending on what karmic credit remains. The cosmos is not interested in permanent punishment. It is interested in balance, in education, in the eventual liberation of every soul from the cycle itself. Moksha, liberation, is the ultimate destination when all karma, both good and bad, has been consumed, and the soul merges back into the divine source from which it emerged. The hells of Hindu tradition were never merely cosmological speculation. They were moral technology, tools wielded by priests, poets, and philosophers to shape behavior in the living world. The Garuda Purana was read aloud during mourning periods not only to guide the dead but to instruct the living who gathered to hear it. Every specific hell, every named punishment, every calibrated suffering was a message to the living audience. Here is what becomes of the one who lies under oath. Here is what awaits the one who abandons their parents in old age. The specificity of Naraka's architecture is not cruelty for its own sake. It is ethical architecture, a detailed map of consequence designed to make the stakes of daily moral choices viscerally real. Fear, in this context, is not the enemy of wisdom. It is its vessel. Every mythology of the afterlife encodes a civilization's deepest values. The Christian hell speaks of faith and apostasy. The Norse hell speaks of how one faced death. The Egyptian duat speaks of the weight of the heart. And Naraka, with its 28 calibrated chambers, its divine accountant, its symmetry of transgression and consequence, its insistence on purification over permanent damnation, speaks of dharma, the sacred order that holds all things together. What Naraka ultimately asks of the living soul is not whether you were powerful or beautiful or beloved. It asks whether you held to your duty, whether you treated other beings as worthy of care, whether you used your knowledge honestly and your authority justly. These are not small questions. They are the only questions that have ever mattered. And in the Hindu cosmos, they are the questions that death will eventually force every soul to answer. Long after the oil lamps of the Shraddha ceremony have burned down to nothing, long after the last line of the Garuda Purana has been read and the mourners have returned to their lives, Naraka persists, not merely as mythology, but as a question pressed against the underside of every ordinary day. The Hindu sages who constructed its architecture were not describing a location. They were describing a law. They were saying, look at what you do. Look at how you treat the world. Look at the weight you are quietly accumulating with every choice you make and every choice you refuse to make. The road to Vaitarni is not paved with grand villainies. It is paved with small ones, with indifference, with the comfortable decision to look away. Naraka does not wait for monsters. It waits for all of us, and it is patient beyond imagining.